All right. So, what am I doing? What the hell am I doing? Um, well, welcome to the Dungeon Jukebox. It's a YouTube channel. How to start, I guess. I've had the name sitting around for a while. And I have been so busy producing other people's podcasts because that's part of my job. I thought that I would do something that's less focused towards other people's stuff and stuff I'd like to do. So I've been around the blocks a little bit, and I have done a fair whack of research into what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And I I'm going to preface this by saying this is going to be just a labour of love. It's just something I've been thinking about for a while, and it will probably go nowhere apart from just kind of I don't know, me and a few people, I imagine, might watch or listen to this because it is very niche. What I'm going to talk about and kind of get good at doing, I suppose, is something that there are a number of people already doing. Number one, the numbers are not massive on any of these channels comparatively compared to like you know this is not for the money at all. This is just something where I feel like there are a bunch of people that do this really, really well, and they do it in different ways. They talk about TTRPGs. So I love tabletop role-playing games, and I have been playing them on and off, mostly on actually, since the late 70s and definitely the early 80s. And I follow a number of people on YouTube who cover this stuff really well. And so I'm not, I suppose algorithmically, I'd be competing with them. But I have kind of like, I think anyone who watches YouTube, because it's a little bit different from Insta, isn't it? And TikTok and stuff, is that, to a point, you kind of curate your feed a bit better. The algorithm is still throwing up, the algorithm does what algorithm does. But I bet that there's a number of channels you'll subscribe to that are almost like kind of like comfort channels. It's a bit like having a slice of cake every now and again. I find that with TTRPG channels, in that, in amongst everything that I could watch, I want to watch something that talks about the rules of a game, because I don't love rules, but I kind of do love rules, if you know what I mean. I'm always fascinated by mechanics in RPGs, both video games and tabletops. How magic's done, whether it uses like Vancian systems or not, or whether it there's something like creative going on with dice, or whether it's much more free form. Magic systems are so hard to control within games. Dungeons and Dragons has always done it by being quite definitive about spell descriptions and so forth, spell slots, that kind of thing. But I also know, as a long time dungeon master myself, that sometimes you get someone on the table who deliberately kind of, they'll read a bit of the spell out, but they won't read you the bit that says like it takes 10 minutes to prepare or something, and they want to cast it mid-combat. So I think that even with these kind of hard and fast rules, it is good. I think, it's good for like beginner players to kind of, they're not used to role playing, so they're kind of like, well, the spell does this, so they take it kind of verbatim and do it. And then as you get more experience, I think, I quite like a free form magic system where you're kind of like, right, you're an elementalist, for example, so you describe what that looks like, the spell, that kind of thing. But you have to be playing with people who are able to do that and don't take the piss also. Anyway, I've gone off a bit of a tangent because magic is one of those things that is hard to control in any system that uses magic. So I have, not with me right now, I'm in a different location from where I would normally record, but I have many leather-bound books, to quote Ron Burgundy. No, I have a lot of rule books, a lot of game systems that I have played and that I do play, and I'm always on this kind of search for, and I know I'll never find it, but I'm always in a search for what I would call the perfect game. So the caveat to that, obviously, is that the perfect game actually, I think Dungeon Masters might agree, the perfect game is the one actually that's not about the rules. It is the one about the people at the table. It is one about, it's about the atmosphere that's created or already is there. And rules, they kind of help. But what I mean by perfect rules, I guess, is the one where I can have a table of people that I have not met before, don't know very well, whatever, and I can just very quickly say, just roll that dice, tell me what you get, or kind of impart the rules easily and carefully, kind of along the timeline of a one shot or something like that, so that by the end of it, they're not really thinking about the rules too much. There were always people. I think it was White Dwarf magazine, sometime in the 80s, where they came out with like the definitive kind of types. This is before YouTube, obviously, where now you get loads of videos about the types of players that you get. But one of them I remember was the rules lawyer. I think it was White Dwarf magazine, or Dungeon maybe. But it talks about the rules lawyer being the guy at the table who's always like a bit sniffy about the rules. Like, well, I think if you look at page 96. Paragraph 3, you'll find that actually, okay, but you slowed the game down, pal. Sometimes that's fine, actually, because, sometimes a dungeon master does need to be kind of like reminded of the rules, because the rules are there for that purpose, to keep people kind of along a similar kind of path together, so that they can't just suddenly just decide, I'm going to fly. Have you got a flying spell? No. Then you're not flying. Oh. So, rules are there for a reason. But, I think that if you have a player, so here's an example. My friend Harry, he joined the table about 2 years ago. And again, maybe Dungeon Masters will agree. Sometimes you get a table of fresh faces and you're like, okay, I wonder how this is going to go. And then you realize that what's happening is that not everybody's converted. But you can see this kind of unraveling where people, that they're in it. They are, they're going to be lifelong RPG fans in that way. And, case in point with Harry is that, we played a few games together with our, one of a different group that I'd normally play with. And then one day he's like, can I borrow the rule books? This was for Old School Essentials, which is a nice, easy system, right? Apart from, THACO, which I still have trouble with. 2-hit Armor Class 0, introduced, I think, in 2nd edition D&D. Maybe, I might be wrong, kill me if I am. But one day he came to my house, he's like, can I borrow these? Yeah, no worries. So he's going to run a game for some friends of his, which is great, because that's like, the gift that continues to give. And so after a couple of weeks, I was like, Harry, how did that go? How did the game go? He said, they loved it. And I was like, okay, did you get the rules down all right? And he's like, I didn't really bother. Just kind of took what he needed. The concept of roll dice high, thing works. Roll to see what happens. That concept was easy, and it is easy, right? Roll a dice, see what happens. Roll a dice, do you hit the thing or not? Do you do the thing or not? What's the repercussion if you don't? How bad is it? How good is it? That's how the narrative is kind of picked up and taken in every instance of every role-playing game, really. Even random number generators in video games, that's what happens. You get a hit or you don't. So with that, and Harry being very, very good at telling a story, very, very quick, natural kind of poetic rhythm to everything that he says and he does, meant that game for him and his friends was brilliant. He'd never run a game before, and there you go. So I guess when I'm looking for like a perfect game, I'm looking for that. I'm looking for the game that I can just sit down with quickly. I know the rules inside out. That's fine. I don't need to touch the rules too much. It's more about the experience, like, like giving flesh to NPCs and to monsters and to environments, creating conflict, not just, sword in the guts kind of conflict, but, conflict as in, this guy wants that and that guy wants that. And this is where the rub is. You know, the less the rules get in your way, the more you create that story where people go home at night and they're like, the next day they text you and they're like, well, that was really good. That was a good game. They're not saying, oh, the rules were great. Although sometimes that does happen. I like those rules. But more often than not, it's the feeling that is created around the table. So I'm always on a hunt for this. Dungeons and Dragons isn't that for me anymore. I love it. But it's not. I think there's well documented by miserable people like me who have just gone. They loved D&D. They loved what it was. They loved what it became, but they don't love it so much now. Now it's someone else's game. Although I will play it if I'm invited to the table. Obviously, I do love it. But I'm looking at kind of simple rule sets now. One of them was Easy D6 that came up. I think Runehammer, Dungeon Master Scotty, I'm going to say. But that was brilliant, right? I pick up this book. I read it cover to cover. It's not hard. It's easy D6. It's a D6 die system. Now I do love a good D20 roll high system, but it's so well put together that I ran the game and it was just so easy. And the karma system in that game is fantastic. I would say it's more interesting than the hope and fear mechanic in Daggerheart. And just quickly on Daggerheart and games that are similar, one thing that I've started to really not enjoy, although I thought it was great at first, one thing that I'm not enjoying as much is the idea that, and there's loads of games that do this, I think Dungeon World does it maybe, that's the first time I think I ever saw it, but it's been taken a lot, which is the whole thing of like, you have your difficulty rating or the difficulty or whatever it is you call it, like, is it 8, is it 10, is it 12, is it 15, is it 18? That's dangerous. And you got to roll a 20 or whatever and beat that score, right? This is defined stuff. That's the same as trying to hit an armor class. It's been around since the late 70s. But what I find hard is the whole bit of like, okay, but you pass, but there's a consequence. You fail like badly, or you fail a bit. So what does this do? There's a tension created there. If you had a coffee and you're kind of buzzing along, and someone rolls that dice and you've already got it in your head, I suppose, that like, oh, if you fail, then this is going to happen. And the DM's already kind of like got that cooking. Or, if you pass, you get a bonus, whatever, because you rolled a nat 20 or whatever, then great, that too. But on a night where you're a bit tired or you've had too many of these rolls, you're having to think on your feet. That is sort of the definition of being a dungeon master or a games master or a warden or whatever, whatever the game system tells you are. But it's really hard to kind of keep coming up with this, like, you climb the wall, but you nearly slip. Or, you go to cut the bonds of that prisoner's rope, but you accidentally, like, cut into their wrist, or whatever it may be. There's only so many times you can kind of do this before the players actually are like almost expecting what comes next. And worse than that, if you've got someone at the table who's being a little bit belligerent, then they start to argue, like, oh, I don't think that would happen that way. You just kind of made that up. Yeah, I have. Because literally the rules are like, you kind of got to make this up, really. And, word to the wise, no secret, DMs do make things up. It's part of the fun. But they're kind of guided by the dice, right? And by the general arc of the plot or the story. So, those games are starting to get on my nerves. And unfortunately, I love Daggerheart. I mean, it's so cool. But that kind of you pass but with a cost thing. No, I want something like Easy D6, which is like pass, fail, simple. the players can feel it as well. They roll that number, they look at the dice, and they're like, "Oh shit," or they're like, "Yeah," because they meet or beat that difficulty. So I prefer that. So I've actually got like probably 2/3 of my rules books have got that kind of pass or fail with a prize. So I don't go back to them so much. Easy D6 is one I'm calling out now as one that I've been playing a fair whack, and I really enjoy it. So, okay, back to the beginning, because I'm rambling a bit, if nothing else, to see what the ambience in this room is like. And I'm very aware that my background is very office, giving office, because it is my friend's office for now, which is like where I'm going to be for a little while. So yes, it's kind of like a bit of a recording test for the gearheads out there who are intrigued by this stuff. I'm using an Osmo Pocket 3. The 4 just been launched, so I'm going to have a little look at that. It's a nice camera. I use it a lot for recording stuff outside, bits of B-roll for other customers that I work with. Other customers? You're not a customer. You're just here because you like TTRPGs. I use it a fair bit for recording stuff on the mats. One day I will show you the door here. I step out that door, the corridor, and open another door, and there is acres and acres of martial arts, particularly Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu mats. There's an entire academy. The shout out to Roger Gracie Academy Marlow, where I train, and the guy who I share this office with trains also. So I use the Osmo Pocket that a lot because it picks up really good footage at 4K. It's got a nice gimbal on it, and it's very cool. I'm using Rode Pod mics ×2, although only one at the moment because there's not two of me. I might get some guest interviews in at some point. I end up using two. I have a Duo Rodecaster, a Rodecaster Duo for this office because it's nice and small and compact. And what I mean, editing-wise, if I edit this at all, I will either use Descript for transcription editing, or I will just use good old Final Cut Pro, which is part of the new subscription creative suite that Apple have introduced, which means I don't have to pay Adobe a penny anymore. Hooray! I don't love Adobe anymore. So yeah, that's the gear I'm recording on. I'm going to be talking about TTRPGs, and before I leave, I want to talk about something that I'm actually really excited about. My friend Daniel, sometime last year, he also started playing D&D with me and various people that I play with. He's a really lovely player, actually. He looks a bit like Kratos from God of War. I actually met him through jiu-jitsu, and yeah, he's worryingly good at jiu-jitsu. You've ever heard of Deep Half before, which is I suppose, a wrestling / grappling phrase. It's exactly where you never want to be with Dan, because he's a monster. Anyway, another tangent, but so he put me on to Dungeon Crawler Carl. He's like, you might like this. And, well, guess what? I did. So I listened to the first book on Audible and really enjoyed it. I'm actually listening to it again because I've become excited because in the last few days, if you're a TTRPG fan, you probably know this already. But yeah, I guess we have a role-playing game coming. It went up on BackerKit about, I don't know, a few days ago. I'm looking at my Mac now. I mean, what they wanted, not too much money for this. Was it like $250,000 or something? US dollars, to be specific. And they've gone straight through 7 million. So they've hit all the targets. It looks like the kind of game I'm really going to like. If it keeps the tone and feel of Dungeon Master Carl, the books by, is it Matt Dinnerman? Yeah, Matt Dinnerman. Self-published originally. Cars. Don't know if you'll hear that, but car. Yeah, Matt Dinnerman wrote this, self-published, and it's gone absolutely bonkers. I think there's a TV show in the works as well, which I'm also kind of excited about. But I've backed this because, well, I really want to play it. Obviously, if you're not like au fait with Dungeon Crawler Carl, there is, I think, it's RPG lit is a subgenre of something where rather than just have kind of like I don't know, like Robert Jordan or David, I'm going to say David Gemmell, one of my favorite authors. Never get the name right, but rather than that kind of like Game of Thrones sort of narrative, this is literally a guy, Carl, and his cat, Princess Donut, who are forced. I don't want to spoil anything, but they're forced into a dungeon. But it's not any old dungeon, as we would expect as seasoned RPG players. This is something a bit special. But what's nice about this is that it's a part of it is just the fact that, I mean, why would he? But he really doesn't want to be there, and the kind of things that happen to him are sort of equally funny and horrific. There are so many nods and pokes and jabs at any video game, RPG, tabletop RPG you can think of. All the tropes are visited at some point or another, but in a really lovely way. But what's really cool is that as he levels up or gets deeper in the dungeon, so like think of it like a mega dungeon, like Arden Vul or something. As you descend, you pick up experience, you get better, you get cool loot and so forth. You get a little bit overpowered sometimes and like underpowered again, but it tells you the stats. So as you kind of go through the book, it's like, right, he opens a box, like a loot box or something in there, he's got a thing and it's going to raise this stat by that much and this stat by that much, but it has the side effect of doing this or whatever or that, or, how long it takes to prepare the spell, that old chestnut, that kind of thing. It's just awesome. It's just a really almost like purist way, I suppose, of kind of like reading RPG. Anyway, that's translated to an actual RPG, TTRPG, tabletop role-playing game. It's going to be like delightful. They've up on the back of Kit page, they're releasing it with a card game, which I guess is like maybe like a sort of roguelike card game, like evolving deck game. I may be wrong, but it's called Unstoppable. And they're kind of doing both at the same time, the RPG and the card game. Although you don't have to back both. I don't think I have. I think I just backed the one. But anyway, it doesn't matter. But the point is that you can download like a little snippet of some of the skills and a couple of the character sheets. So you can download Carl's character sheet and Donut's character sheets. You kind of like from that you can get an idea of where this game is sitting. And I think it's going to be in a really good place. So here's another thing. I don't know if this is for everyone, but as you kind of like get older, it's harder to be, as players, more as engaged in the game as you were when you were kids. It's like where once you were delving into a fantasy world with your friends, and kind of like absorbing yourself in that. I mean, I remember like hitting kind of like 12, 14-hour games, when I was a young man, like overnighters and stuff. These days, it's like get like a 4-hour game in, and actually, more and more people are there for a bit of a laugh and a release, rather than to become obsessed with the lore and everything. So a game like this that is kind of already, I'm going to use a word I've not used, I think, forever, rambunctious. But for a game that's already like, or a book that's already kind of there, it means that we know this is going to be a right old laugh. I suppose, and strangely enough, and probably confusing to some people, is that Dungeon Crawl Classics may have a similar sort of feel to it. But this is definitely going to be different because there are elements of like modern day tech, and there's like a wider thing going on outside of the dungeon, which is on like a galactic level. So there's a huge difference, but it's DCC in it, so Dungeon Crawler Carl, and Dungeon Crawl Classics. Not to be confused. But yeah, this is going to be the kind of game where I think you're going to, it's going to be good fun for 3 or 4 hours on a Sunday afternoon or whatever. And then, it will be hopefully kind of a palate cleanser for the more, serious campaign that you might be running. For me, I don't really run campaigns anymore because people don't have the time, right? I mean, it's like, and again, if you're putting in the effort of creating a campaign and then people are like, I can't make next week or whatever, then, it's fine. They've got families, they've got stuff to do, they're busy people. So one-shots are actually really, really good, which is why I play so many different rule systems because, one day I might play, like Index Card RPG or Easy D6 or Shadow Dark or something. I'm really looking forward to adding a game into the roster which is purely there, for like hard-hitting, visceral, explosive dungeon madness, right? And I hope that's what this ends up being. I'm pretty sure it's going to be. I'm just looking at the page again now. So yeah, as I've been talking, they've already gone up like 30 grand or something. It's really going to be worth a look at. I mean, there he is. There's Carl in his white boxer shorts with hearts on them. It gives you like a clue to the tone of what this is. Anyway, so when I heard about this, it kind of inspired me. I thought, right, okay, I've been sitting on doing this YouTube channel for probably 2 months, thinking, yeah, there's not going to be much in it, but I'm not in it for the money, obviously. I would pick a whole different niche if I was doing that. But anyway, so I think over the next weeks and months, if I continue this, I'll be showing you different rule sets. I'll be doing some reviews of my experiences with games. And, I might just do some complimentary things where, the other guys, the other dungeon tubers, I think they call themselves, maybe. There's maybe some things here and there where I have maybe like a counter opinion or something like that. But what I'm going to try and do is never be sensationalist about this stuff. At the end of the day, these are role-playing games. You sit down with your friends, you play these games, right? It's not the be-all and end-all, right? So I'm not going to go for the sensationalist angle on these things at all. Anyway, I'm going to finish this one here because, wow, I've been talking for half an hour to a camera, no less. So I will come up with a fancy, like, tagline or something. Like, stay classy, YouTube? Whoop. No, it won't be that one. Anyway, listen, have whatever your next game is. I hope it's great. Remember to be kind to a dungeon master. They need it. Toodle pip.